Very excited about this one because we've been trying to get them in. So I'm not going to be too wordy up here. First of all, thank you for making it out in the snow. I think this is going to be crazy valuable. I also think that we are going to very graciously ask him to come back periodically to keep things going, which is a conversation we had. So with that, I will leave it to you.
Excellent. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
And I'm so sorry I'm running behind. Each side gets slammed just a little bit harder than you do over
Oh, you
here.
came from the east
From
side?
Solon, yeah. So it was supposed to be 45 minutes turning to 90. So.
Uh-huh.
But my name's Chad Kuzner, and I own Credit Repair Resources here in Cleveland. Has anybody heard of me before today?
I use it all the time.
You do? Awesome. Thank you so much. Sophia, right?
Yep.
Nice to finally meet you in person. So basically, the reason I do this is because I was in the trenches. I was a loan officer for a decade myself. And when I was going through this process of buying my second home in Solon, where I am now, where I came from this morning, I pulled my credit and it was horrible. It was a 570 and every product I wanted was 680 or higher. This was back in 2005. And I went around to my office, I go, how do I get my credit score up? And they're like, well, whatever you do, don't hire a credit repair company because all they do is take your money and they don't do anything for you, so just write the letters. So I did some research and I couldn't figure out exactly what the templates were, who to write to, what to ask, what could come off my credit report, what might not come off my credit report, how to get the scores up. So someone referred me to an attorney in Cincinnati. His name's Ed Garrett, and I thank him every day because he's the reason I'm in business. Because I called him and he says, I don't know if I can help you, let me see your credit report. I sent it over to him, he said, give me some money, sign these documents and call me in 60 days, right? I did.
Okay.
I said, well, you know what, okay, you're just an attorney litigator that worked on consumer debt law, so he didn't have the rights to pull credit for consumers. So I went and looked at it, my scores were up, went home to my wife and I said, I got a great idea. And I said, I want to open a credit repair company. And thought she was going to, as my joke is, hit me with a brick, but she goes, great idea. You would need to meet my boss, Bob Willis. So I met with Bob and he liked the idea, we beta tested it, and actually today, ironically, February 7th is our 11th anniversary. So we're licensed, we're bonded, we're insured as a credit service organization in the state of Ohio. We're federally compliant. I've got, since 2001, credit in lending and understanding that process. My partner's litigated consumer laws for 25 years. The point that I tell you is the reason is we're serious about what we do. So when people have buyers, when you're a realtor or you're in the mortgage lending business, and you have people that come to you that say, well, I really want to buy a house, we wanted to come out looking this morning, but my credit's not great, right? Well, your first thought is, well, I'm commission only, so go fix your credit, and when you're ready to buy, come back and see me. Or, let me refer you to my lender, he'll pull your credit and tell you what to do, okay? A lot of lenders have tools like the what-if simulators, right? So if you use like Nations Lending or whoever it is that is your partner, they have things in the back that they can see what paying down balances might do to your credit score, what paying off a collection might do for your credit scores. But when someone's been through an event, they've been through bankruptcy, job loss, divorce, medical event, and their credit has taken a serious hit, but they're working again, they're back on track, and they just need help figuring out how to navigate through the waters of a bad credit report, that's where we come in. Okay, so we take your clients, they come through to us, they go ahead and send us the credit report. And we look at everybody free of charge. There's no obligation to use our services whatsoever. So typically they'll come from a lender if they've pulled credit and were initially denied, or we might help them get a copy from a third-party site. We'll talk about some good tips that you can give your clients and where you best places to get your credit scores today. When we get their credit report in, it goes to one of our experts, they review it, identify whether or not we may be able to help them. So if we think that they're overexposed on their debt, they are maxed out on their credit cards, they have severe drogs that are just really impacting their scores that our services aren't going to help them for, or they're currently late on their obligations. If they owe money now and they can't pay their bills today, credit repair is not going to help them. All they're doing is bandaging up somebody that doesn't deserve to buy a home. So the people that's who your best referrals for us are, those are your best long-term buyers, right? Put them in your when department, we call it. And to be able to identify that. So when you're talking to your clients or the people that come to your open houses or someone gets referred to you, they want to buy a house, that's one of your questions. Okay, so if your credit is not in great shape, do you currently feel financial stress or did you have some sort of event? that's a great way to kind of segue the conversation, because nobody likes to talk about their bad credit, right? I mean, it's kind of, especially if they want to buy a home. And so you have to kind of navigate those waters, and that's how we make it easier for them to open up. And then as soon as they come in and say, well, I went bankrupt 2 years ago, but it's discharged, and I'm just trying to figure things out, okay, well, maybe not this month or in a few months, but let's see where you are from here. Or I got divorced and my credit got smashed, you know, that my husband was supposed to pay the mortgage and the credit cards, and he didn't, and they're still in my name. That's somebody that might be able to be helped. Somebody that lost their job for a while and is working again. Somebody that didn't have insurance for the whole coverage of what they need. Somebody that might be a buyer in the near future. But again, maxed out on credit cards, they need help, and it's not going to be anytime soon before they're going to be able to buy homes. Severe judgments and charge-offs, things like that, and if they're currently not on time. So we get that reported, we identify, hey, what's the situation with this person? We take from what they tell us, an intake, and what the report says, and come back to them. And so if they're maxed out, we're still going to help them for free. We're going to say, Mrs. Jones, or Johnny needs a house, here's your situation. Credit repair is not in your best interest, here's why. Here's what your best options are. Maybe you want to talk to a bankruptcy attorney, or maybe our debt assistance program, we have what we call a debt assistance program, where if someone has $15,000 or more in credit card debt, they come to us, we can work it out so that they can pay 50 cents on the dollar and they get 36 months to pay. So they pay half and they don't have to settle all at once. We are able to set it up so that they get a payment plan for 36 months to get out of the debt. But that's not putting them with you back in 3 to 6 months is what our goal is. So when we see the person that's been through the event that says, listen, I got divorced, I'm back on track, I need to get in a house, I'm relocated, or whatever it is, my lease is up in 4 months and I need to get into a house because it goes month to month, it goes up, whatever the scenario. That's where we get them in. And we say, okay, listen, you're a great candidate for what we do, we'd like to offer you our services, here's how they work. And we go through a very scripted call that I don't want to spend all the time this morning with you on. But we'll let them know, listen, there's 3 things that I can't tell you, is how long this is going to take. I can't tell you what your scores are going to be when we're done, and I have no idea what exactly is coming off your credit report and what's going to be corrected. Those are questions that if anybody answers for you, they're being deceptive. It's like going to an attorney and saying, I'll retain you if you promise I'll win. Because you just don't know. We don't know what the furnishers are going to say from our questions that we ask. I don't know how you're going to manage your credit, and that's what dictates your credit scores. And I don't know exactly, you know, how long it's going to take to get the answers that we need. So let's work together. It's a team sport. Reputation, 11 years, being referred to us, you know that you're in the right place. Because there's a lot of credit repair companies out there that promise ridiculous results. Guaranteed 700 scores, guaranteed 90 days or less, guaranteed removal of items, things like that we just won't do. 1, it's illegal. 2, it creates a hassle for us internally from a complaint standpoint. We don't want clients calling in and saying, your guy told me X to get the deal. And then most importantly, our business all comes from referrals. So the last thing we want is ever for one of your referrals to call and say, they promised me this, now I'm on a contract and now I can't get done. So we're very candid about what we'll do. Now what we can do is if they do get into our program and you have a landlord or somebody that's doing a land contract or a lease option, something like that, where they need a letter to know that this person's working on their credit, we'll send a letter of intent that, hey, listen, they've taken the first steps. We believe from what we've looked at that if they do what they're supposed to do, we can get them in a mortgage-ready position in less than 6 months. We'll send something like that out, but we just can't guarantee the outcome. So, but once we get them enrolled, we become your conduit between them, the lender, and you. So if it's coming directly, let's say whatever your lender partner is, that comes through them, when we get the client in, what makes us different is they get assigned that case manager that initially screened the credit. That's their advocate for 3 to 6 months or 7 months, however long it takes. They're interviewing them, they're going through their name, social, date of birth, what we call technical or identifying information. They go through all these negative items, hear their side of the story, try to create a more aggressive argument than they'd be able to as a consumer, and then put together an action plan. So you don't have any open positive credit. Hey, your balances are really high. You said you have some money to pay down. These are what I want you to pay down first. Here's a secured card I want you to open. Here's how we add an authorized user account to your card. Become their credit coach, basically, and become their advocate while they're learning what to do. So as we get them through that discovery call, We launch that first investigation to the bureaus, and then we set a timer for 25 days. Support calls them, hey, how we doing? We've got to wait 40 days to get your responses back. Here's why it takes a long time to repair credit. If you didn't know this, the Fair Credit Reporting Act states that any furnisher, meaning a creditor, collection company, whatever, that reports the information, has 30 days to reply to any inquiry, and the bureaus then have that timeline to get us an answer initially. Plus, they allow for 5 days for processing and mailing time each way. So we'll wait 40 days before we update the client initially. We'll call them. If we've got the lender report that we started with, we'll go to a third-party monitoring service that I want to talk about in a minute, and we get those in here so that we can go ahead and see what we've done. And we generate what's called a report card. So the report card is really important. That's the reason that you have to contact your buyer. So you get it, and you'll know where their scores are, you know where their deletions and corrections of what we're doing are, what's their game plan look like, meaning, are they paying down their debts? Are they opening the new accounts like they said? Are these serious buyers doing what they have to do to be part of this team sport? Last, if anything new has shown up on the credit report, then we're going to let them know, hey, this is why the scores aren't improving, you have a new collection. That snapshot comes to you in an email. That's your chance to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to pull their contact record up, and it actually comes with their phone number and email, so you can dial it right there from the email. Hey, it looks great, it looks like you're really close, I'm going to email you a couple listings. Whatever it is to stay in contact, that's your cue to not have to worry about your pipeline with us. And that's what helps everybody stay together. It really is a team sport. It's not just us and the consumer, it's you, it's the lender, it's everybody being in this person's corner, coaching them and encouraging them that they can be homeowners. What we do from there is a 5-point kind of a process. So it's a rinse and repeat on the report cards every 40 days, so as you know what the timeline is. But instead of just milling letters back and forth with the credit reporting agencies, we'll go to these furnishers directly, asking for paperwork. We don't represent the client as their attorney, but we reserve the right to send demand letters on behalf of the client. Does that make sense for the company? So he represents Credit Repair Resources. Their client, John, needs a collection removed, has requested information you have failed to provide. Please provide this agreement or payment fee and penalty schedule to my office. Sincerely, Robert Lewis, Esquire. So those go out, they're pretty aggressive. That doesn't work. Ultimately, what we're going to do, is anybody in this room not know who the CFPB is? You don't know or do you know? Okay, so the CFPB is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. The CFPB is, we're familiar with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. Okay, well in 2010, when Dodd-Frank got passed, the CFPB was created to oversee Dodd-Frank and the implementation. Well, since 2010, it's basically taken over all financial services related industries, from credit repair to lenders to payday loans to collection companies, because it's a more nimble entity. It can go after smaller organizations. The FTC is a massive organization. Consider that like the battleship versus a gunboat. Okay, so the CFPB, if you write this down, consumerfinance.gov, that's the site you can go to. It's like the Better Business Bureau on steroids. Because if you know how the BBB functions, when you make a complaint or an inquiry, right, it goes in an email to the company. They have to open up it. They have to look and research everything that they need to know about that file, and then they have to write a response. And then the consumer is allowed to write a response, and then the BBB will decide whether or not it was amicably resolved, and therefore adjust your rating with the BBB. That's how that works. Well, the CFPB has regulatory enforcement rights. So they don't just send that inquiry and then decide if it was resulted in the right outcome. They actually can go after these collection companies and the creditors and the lenders and the credit repair companies and the mortgage lenders. You name it, if they're under their jurisdiction, if they don't like the answer, then they come at you with what they call a series of interrogatory paperwork reporting you ever had. So my point is that when we make a CFPB inquiry, if we're legitimate, we have a great result. So we've been able to complete the process of repairing credit by creating this stepped process that consumers can do on their own, absolutely, and in our disclosures we have to disclose to them. You 100% can do this on your own. However, you can also buy a home on your own. You can also do your taxes on your own. So some people choose to do that. Some people choose to, get a realtor, they choose to get a CPA, they choose to get a credit repair company to do it. And we do a very good job at facilitating. A couple of things there. First of all, anybody you send to us never gets billed initially. Every review is free. They decide whether or not they want to use us. If they decide they want to use us, we authorize a credit card. They don't pay us anything until we finish that discovery call. They know exactly what to expect from the case manager's perspective, and then we send off those initial audit letters. That's when we capture the first payment. So the average consumer is going to pay us about between $600 and $800 for the services over time. So depending on the severity of their file, it's going to be $150, $250, or $350 after the initial suite is completed, that discovery call. And then it's $109 a month for a maximum of 6 months. Don't worry about the pricing. I mean, you can write down $600 to $800, but the reality is this, is if you're referring people to us that really want our help, we're the less than a cost of a water heater, okay? And we have a warranty. So if they come into us, because I can't tell them exactly what the outcome's gonna be, and we're ineffective in helping them improve their profile, meaning the data hasn't changed. Scores I can't guarantee. But if we can't help finding a meaningful improvement of their profile, we give them their money back, no questions asked. I don't want it, I can't guarantee anything else but that, and that's why we review their credit initially, is because we've done it like 5 times in 11 years. I have fired more clients than I have given performance refunds. We call them PITA refunds. You guys know what PITA is, right? Okay, so we file it under PITA refund because I don't want your money and you're not a good client for us and we're not a good fit and we don't want our partners to ever have that issue. But that's even very rare because we won't offer our service. We'll take it away from them. If they're calling in before they even get started and are acting, you've had plenty of buyers, I'm sure, that seem to want to control the process, right? We're going to do this my way.
Once or twice.
Anytime someone comes to us and says, we're going to do this my way, we say it's the highway. We really do, because it doesn't make sense. Because we know they're going to be problematic. We know that, you know what, for the few $100 we're going to make on you, you're going to cause us more headache. And I've always told my client, my billing department hates me because I'll give, just refund their last payment, close their file, if that's fair. We start there and we'll kind of work it back. And they're like, I don't want to give back the money, we worked hard on it. And I'm like, if you knew how long it takes for me to formulate a BBB response and how many hours it takes to listen to phone calls and make sure that I'm giving the right answer, we're saving money, right? And my favorite line of a movie right now is Bronx Tale. Do you ever see that? Okay, where Sonny says to see the $20 that that guy owed him, he keeps chasing him around, he goes, let it go. It's the best $20 you ever spent because you'll never see him again. And that's the same type of philosophy. But okay, so that's what we do. You can refer them with confidence if you haven't before. For every 10 people you have, do you have 10 people a year that come to you with bad credit? Okay, for every 10, we're going to turn back 2 or 3 as real deals. So if we work together, that's been our average over the last decade or so, is 3 and 10 become real deals. The other 7 are going to fall off. We're either just, not going to be able to get them all the way there, they're going to fall off completely, or they might go somewhere else. And that's what's important about those report cards. If you're sending us clients, stay in touch with them because they get credit muscles. I boost them up 40 points. The next thing you know, they are going to their buddy or whoever else they talk to. Now they have options versus somebody that was willing to help them from the beginning. So if you stay with them. But one of the things that I think that we could touch base on today is credit scores, because when I mentioned as us going to get their updated bureau, I'm sure you have a lot of clients that say, well, you sent me to the lender, they said I was a 580, I went online last night, I was a 667, I don't get this, right? So the score differentiation, do you guys have issues with that with clients? Does anybody here, know exactly how the reasoning behind that? Okay, so we all know what our FICO score is. You heard that, right? Well, the Fair Isaac Corporation basically is the company that creates the algorithms behind how our credit scores generated. So our credit scores are generated based on how our responsible use of credit is, our credit history and mix of credit, okay? FICO, Fair Isaac Corporation, has over 60 commercially available credit scoring models, okay? So when people say, what's my credit score? The most famous answer to every credit question is, it depends. See, because a credit card company is looking at completely different criteria than an auto lender. An auto lender is looking at completely different criteria than a mortgage company, okay? So there are so many different credit scores that are out there. When someone says, I got my Discover statement and I'm a 720, that's your credit card score. That has nothing to do with what the auto lender is going to see or what the mortgage lender is going to see. That's number one, first of all, over 60 FICO scores. Number 2 is that FICO Classic, write this down if you can, Beacon, B-E-A-C-O-N, Classic and Empirica, E-M-P-I-R-C-A, Empirica.
Spell that one more time.
Empirica, E-M-P-I-R-C-A, Empirica. Those are the credit scoring models that TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian each use. That's all one model, by the way, okay? That's all one model, named different for each of the three bureaus. This is my industry, right? Each bureau has their own name for the same credit scoring model. But what's important to know about those three names, when you ever hear your Classic, your Beacon, or your Empirica score, those are the scores that a mortgage lender uses only. And it's an exclusive model that's a holdout from 2004 that's still being used by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In order for a loan to be deliverable to Fannie or Freddie, FHA, USDA, conventional, okay, it has to be scored under the Classic scoring model. Otherwise, it's no good. So when people go to Credit Karma, or they go to their auto lender and say, this was my score here, or get their Discover score, none of that matters. What matters is what the lender pulls. So even us, as a credit repair company, we use a system called ProCredit. Okay, ProCredit gives us a scoring model called Vantage Score. Has anybody ever heard of Vantage Score? Has anybody heard of Credit Karma? Okay. All right. So slow down for a second here. 2006. Rewind back to 2006.
What was that first thing you said when you came in?
Right? So that's why he wants me to come back again, so I can say it all over again.
No pressure.
Right?
You're doing great.
So,
You're doing great.
but here's the deal. So we know that your FICO scores are very subjective based on the type of business that you're getting, right? That's all one thing. When consumers are going and looking at their credit scores, they're not even looking at a FICO score, okay? We all know the big three credit reporting agencies, right? Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. What you might not know is that every time someone pulls credit with a FICO score, they pay a royalty, whether it's pennies or not, to FICO, okay? So a while back, they created their own credit scoring model called Vantage Score Solutions, right? It's like people say, well, it's not rocket science. Well, it is. It's actually algorithms, and they got really smart people, and they created their own company, and they're trying to take FICO out of business and saying, why? We have the data, we have the algorithms, we're cheaper overall because we pass the cost on to you. If you use our scoring model, why not? So when consumers are going to most websites, they're looking at one of these Vantage Score models, and their credit scores are inherently, our credit scores are going to be inherently higher when we pull them. Why? Because paid collections are bypassed by these models. So if I pay a collection off for $300 that lowered my score $100, the second that zero balance reports on Vantage Score, my score is going to skyrocket again. All of a sudden I'm 750 again. Under the Classic model, when you go to a lender and you pay off a collection, your scores drop. This is why this one Beacon, Empirica, and Classic model is still being used by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. People say, well, I'm just going to go pay off all my debts and I'll be good. Okay? Well, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac aren't so keen on that. They're saying, you know what, Chad? You just paid off old debt, specifically old bad debt. That doesn't make you a good borrower today. Okay? We need to see that you can responsibly use your credit over the coming year, and we'll let your credit score come back organically. Right? So when you pay off collections and judgments and derogatory debts initially through the Classic model and the reports there, your scores are going to drop intentionally. That's why they haven't adopted any of these newer scoring models, because they want that to happen. They want, you have to earn this house. You know, 2001 to 2006, it felt like owning a home was a right. It's not. And so that's where Fannie Mae have been completely hesitant, number one, from that perspective. Two, all of their guidelines, all of their pricing, all of their things that they do on Wall Street and the way that these loans are priced out are all systems that are based on this Classic model. So you're not just, it's not like upgrading to Windows 10. This is a massive undertaking that requires, you know, across industries to be able to upgrade and implement a new credit scoring model. So is it going to happen? Eventually, I'm sure there will be. But for the foreseeable next 2 to 3 years, no, you're not going to see any change in these models. So the takeaway from everything I've just thrown at you, and people say it's like drinking from a fire hose when I talk, I know. But the takeaway is when they're looking at their credit scores and they say my score's higher, be like, it's not. It's not. You're looking at what they call as a consumer educational credit score, or an educational credit score. You could never take a credit report that you pull online and walk into a bank and say, can I borrow based on my credit report? As a matter of fact, those are consumer disclosures, they call them, or consumer educational reports. A credit report is generated when you say, I want. I want a car, I want a credit card, I want a house, I want a TV, I want furniture. When you make an inquiry for a firm offer for credit, that's considered a hard credit pull on your credit. Make sense? That's a hard inquiry. Now, on the other side, okay, when you go and look at your credit reports online, you go to Credit Karma, or you go to like Identity Guard, or you go to myfico.com, we'll talk about that in a minute. Any place you go to pull your credit and look at it online is considered a soft pull. So it does not impact your credit scores at all. You can go look at 30 different websites in one day, it's not gonna hurt your credit
But
scores.
it's not accurate,
But it's not accurate unless,
unless you're buying right then.
no, because even so, we don't know what the model is that you're
Okay.
gonna go make the application at. But myfico.com will give you access to all of your major FICO scores, your mortgage score, it'll give you your credit card score, and it'll give you your auto score. Now, I'm gonna confuse you intentionally so you understand this time, because there's 13 different FICO scores on that website.
Oh.
Remember before I just said that
So I
FICO
have to
Classic
buy it.
has its own name for each of the three bureaus, Beacon, Empirica, and Classic?
Okay.
Here's why. Even under, when you go to myfico.com, there's a separate credit card score for Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. There's a separate car score for Equifax, TransUnion.
So they each give you
They
three?
each have their own little tweaked model that they buy from FICO. Does that make sense?
Okay, so for each one.
One for it. Let me give you a quick- Here. So, all right, so you've got FICO scores, okay? Here's Equifax, EFX, TU, and Experian, XP. Okay, these are your three different bureaus. Here, you have your auto score, you have your credit card score, and you have your mortgage score, and you have your generic score, okay? Each one of these creates one for each bureau, slightly different algorithms for each of these three bureaus. So you have so many different FICO scores, it'll make your head spin.
So how do they figure it out? They take the average of each, or?
No, each one is scored on its own algorithms, its own criteria, based on credit card payment history and revolving debt default. If it's an auto score, right, if you're looking at your car score, it's going based on any repossessions or late payments on your auto vehicle, it's weighting heavier on that. If it's your mortgage score, it's going to weight on your long-term installment debt, and it's also going to look closely at your revolving. So it's going to look at each one of these different formulas are going to be based on the industry and what that industry has said that they need in criteria.
So
So-
basically, if you're, for instance, car, you're going to buy a car, your score just depends on which company they use to pull your credit.
Correct. So, right, and especially in the car business, they don't pull all three bureaus. In the mortgage industry, they pull what's called a tri-merge credit report.
Right,
So
they
they
do
pull one
everything.
from each three bureaus, and then they use the middle of the three scores, right? So that's how they do that. Under most of the car industries, they typically will buy TransUnion or Equifax. They just buy one score.
Right.
Now, if you have great credit, okay, shouldn't be as confusing for you, because if you're in the 700s, you're most likely going to get what you're looking for, it doesn't matter. But when you're dealing with buyers that are between 580 and 640, all this stuff matters, depending on what you're getting. Yes, you had a question?
If you're buying a car and you have crappy history of paying off your mortgage, but you have good history with other things in cars, are they gonna see, or they're not gonna see your value?
They'll see everything.
Oh, they
They
will,
still
even the
see
car-
everything, they
okay.
just, so, I mean, this is more from my CE class, but they're basically, your credit is made up of characteristics, variables, and weights. Okay, the characteristics are how many collections are on there, right? This is the age of those collections. This is, what is the weight of those collections? Same thing with all your revolving accounts. How many revolving accounts? What is the average balance of each account and payment history of those accounts will end up giving you a weight. So based on what you're trying to buy, different weights are placed on different criteria.
Okay.
So that's why there's so many different scores. But back, let's bring it back home to the home buying process. You need to know, my mortgage lender pulls one score. It's your classic score. That's what I typically call it, your classic score. Doesn't matter what any other credit score you see means or says, or reads, unless you go to myfico.com and look at what your mortgage score is, your classic score, anything you're showing me online doesn't mean anything. So if whoever your partner is, then trust them. You don't ever want to call them and say, why are your scores so much lower? Because now you're going to know. Make sense? All right, so that's credit scores 101. There's way more behind that, but I think I've given you enough on that. Yeah.
Go back to characteristic, variable, and weight.
Yes.
Characteristic is the number of collections you have.
Correct.
Variable is,
Are they present? So if the collections, are collections present? Yes.
okay,
How many collections are there? 4. What is the weight of those collections? Is it, and it's usually between a range, 0 to 90, right? So if you have 4 collections, okay, and they would look at the other variables, how soon they were just opened, they would give you a weight of 90 points reduced, or you actually add it to your, you get 90 points out of that, or completely opposite. You may end up at 0 if you have too many collections based on that. But if you have no collections and the score pool is worth 90 points based on the model created, you get 90.
okay.
And that's how your score is generated. Has anybody here looked at their credit report in the last 6 months? Does anybody here not have a Credit Karma account? Raise your hand. All right, if you're not monitoring your credit, here's my public service announcement. You should be monitoring your credit all the time. Every week, go to Credit Karma. It's free. You don't get a ton of information, but you get to see 2 of your 3 credit scores, and you get to see if anything serious has happened on your credit. You do, wait, hang on one second. You do know that you had 150 million people's information stolen from Equifax. That's 75% of the people that have credit scores had their stuff stolen, meaning that 75% of the people in this room had your stuff stolen, and someone's sitting on it right now. So go ahead.
That's good.
I was just gonna say that usually I pull mine through Capital One, they have the credit-wise
Okay.
built into it, is that?
Do they give you the whole report or just a score?
Just like the score, and then it also kinda, I mean, it does say like what the amounts are, kind of, it's very.
If it has like a fraud alert or any type of alert to tell you if any new credit's been established, that's fine. Somewhere you should be monitoring your credit. If your bank gives you an option to look at it, that's fine. I know Fifth Third's got a pretty cool thing. They'll give you a 3-bureau report for like $4 a month or something like that. But as long as you're monitoring your credit, I really do encourage you to. So here's the deal. You know, with 140 million people, 145 million people's information being stolen, it's not just about the credit that you, in moving forward, if someone's stealing your identity later. You have to continually look at your checking accounts now, your credit cards that you have that are open and active, because they get this information, and if they can use your existing accounts, they're going to. There are also, I believe, 2 million people that had their credit card information and all that stuff stolen from their monitoring services. So if you're not monitoring your bank accounts and your credit, you know, at least bi-weekly, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, the reality is that this is not the last breach we're going to have. Okay, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen in other places. And these hackers are not stupid. They'll sit on your information for a long, 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 long time, and they just trickle things out. So I've actually found a couple things that I've had to call on. I've gotten like some subscriptions for like $9.99 that I look familiar, like things that I might actually subscribe to. And I call them up, I'm like, no, I never signed up for that. So you really want to check the small details, especially if you're like me. You know, I go for gas, I stop for food, I get a sandwich, I get a coffee. I've got all kinds of $6 and $9 charges on my credit in my account every month. Look really very closely at those and pay attention. Credit freezes and fraud alerts. Let's finish up here. So if you feel that you've been a victim of identity theft, if you've heard about the freeze or the fraud alert that Equifax is offering, a credit freeze, if you pay cash for everything in your life, and you don't use credit whatsoever, you can freeze your credit, meaning that nobody can get in, nobody can look at it, nothing can happen to it until you call each bureau individually and unfreeze your account. So if you don't use any credit, it makes sense. But otherwise you have to pay to freeze it, and you have to pay to unfreeze it, and you have to call each bureau individually. But if you just want to be protective of your credit and don't use it very often, you can add a fraud alert to your credit. Okay, so you call one of the 3 bureaus, either any of the 3 doesn't matter, get them on the phone and say, I want to add fraud alert to my account. They add that to your account at no charge, and then they will notify the other 2 credit reporting agencies for you. So it's a one-stop shop, it's free of charge, and what's even better is, under the freeze, if you apply for credit, you have to go and unfreeze them. When you have a fraud alert, it'll allow the lender to pull credit after they've called your cell phone and said, hey Chad, did you authorize a credit pull just now at J Honda? Yes, I did. Okay, great, then they allow the credit to be processed, and at that point, they can move forward. So it's just a great protection that's out there for you. The fraud alert, I suggest, over anything if you use your credit.
Who do you call for that?
Any of the three bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, or Experian, they'll gladly take care of it for you. TransUnion seems to be the fastest to pick up for us. Other than that, there's more that I could tell you, but I think I've filled your heads pretty well here for the last 45 minutes. Anybody have questions for me regarding buyers or issues or student loans or kids and credit and anything that I can answer on here this morning?
I think that maybe kind of how we operate, because we're expecting a return visit, is when we know you're coming in the next time. We usually will group together and kind of like create some scenarios, questions, so we'll have something better equipped for you to address.
Okay,
So,
well, at least now you know what
yeah,
to
I
do.
mean,
Yeah,
just,
well-
this has been a wealth of
And
information.
he videotapes it.
You know,
sometimes
so-
we'll review it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so usually
Gotcha.
we'll facilitate, like, you know, hey, I'm having a question about this or the other thing, and I'll kind of keep record of it, and then I'll
Okay.
give you a heads up before you come in next time.
Awesome, thank you very much.
Sure.
Would I be able to get a copy of that? Do you think?
What I would do is I'd probably send it to you ahead of time,
Okay,
so you could like take a look at it like the day before,
yeah,
so you're equipped. That's kind of how we do things.
okay, gotcha,
And I'm
yeah,
happy to add you to that system.
awesome,
Okay?
thank you.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, thanks, everybody. I'm gonna leave you some cards.